Fourth graders, we're going to begin a project called one-point perspective. One-point perspective is a drawing that shows distance and space, and it's created mathematically using a ruler and pencil, and then you can add color to it. Here's a photograph of one-point perspective. You can see that the image seems to go back into space. All the columns seem to get smaller, and they go back into one little point, that archway in the far background. Here's another photograph of where it seems to go back into the background. The street seems to go back to that one house or apartment building in the background. All of the road and all of the buildings get smaller and smaller as they go that direction. Here's a painting somebody did. You can follow the trail of that road, and all of the imagery seems to go towards that direction. Even the barn is kind of diagonal, and you can see that diagonally it gets smaller as it goes towards that end of the road. Here's a famous piece of art where they use one-point perspective. The people closest to us are bigger, and farther away the people are smaller. You can even see that the buildings in this famous piece get smaller as they go farther away. Or here's a very famous piece of art. The people in the front row are closer to us because they're bigger. The middle row, they're further away because they're medium, but then you can see people in the way background that are a lot smaller. You'll even notice that, look at the pavement on the ground. The lines on the pavement, the squares of the pavement get smaller as they go back. They turn diagonal to get there. Or here's one by Vincent van Gogh. The bed is diagonal and it gets smaller as it keeps going back. You can create one-point perspective pretty easily by just using shapes and make the shapes look like they are disappearing at one point. Here's one where one person just used rectangles and squares, and they seem to be disappearing at one point. It looks a little bit like Warp Speed off of a movie. Here's some more shapes that seem to be disappearing. They've got lines that all disappear at one single point. In a little bit, we'll learn about what those things are called. Now, before we start, you need to know that this is going to be a project that's going to challenge you, and it might be difficult and a little bit frustrating. So here are some helpful hints and tips. You need to always use a ruler, a pencil, and a good eraser because you will erase often. Draw lightly because you'll need to erase part of your drawing, so don't press too hard with your pencil. Pay attention. Perspective drawing is one of the more difficult concepts in the art room. That's why I'm giving you these tips. You need to have patience and keep trying even when you're frustrated. Ask a partner for help or ask me for help. And we're going to practice because it does take a long time to get really awesome at this. But if you practice, your knowledge will come and you will be good at it. Now, there are 3 terms that you need to know in linear perspective, in one-point perspective: horizon line, vanishing point, and orthogonal lines. First, the horizon line is where things are at eye level. It's what divides the sky from the ground. Like this, it's where the sky meets the land or the water. Now, you can locate the horizon line outside by looking at where the land ends and the sky begins. But sometimes we can't see that, so you have to make one up in your mind or decide. Also, the horizon line can be different. It's what is ever at eye level sometimes. That will help you decide if you can't see it. If you're standing tall, the horizon line is higher. If you're sitting, the horizon line is lower. And if you're down towards the ground, or maybe you're just a person that is shorter, then your horizon line is lower than a person that is taller or higher up on a ladder or standing tall. Then we have vanishing point. The vanishing point is on the horizon line where the perspective lines meet. Okay? It's a dot that is on the horizon line. It's the place where images and the things appear to disappear. We know that they're not really going away. The world doesn't end there, but this is the point where they're so far away that they vanish, that they disappear. And then we have orthogonal lines. Orthogonal lines are straight lines that are drawn, most often at an angle, from the vanishing point to your shape, such as this. They are noted by these blue dotted lines because eventually you erase most of the line. But it's a way that mathematically and with rules make things look smaller. Here at the orthogonal lines, the vanishing point and the horizon line are seen in a photograph. These things are seen all around us. Now that you know about them, you can observe them as you're going through life, driving down the road, walking down a hallway. Here are some more. Vanishing point, horizon line, and orthogonal lines. Let's all practice that. Let's say it together. Vanishing point, horizon line, orthogonal lines. Vanishing point, horizon line, orthogonal lines. Here they are in some imagery. Vanishing point, horizon line, orthogonal lines. They create an illusion of depth, things being deep or far away, form, and space, close to us and far away from us. Here it is again in a famous painting called School of Athens by the artist Raphael. Now, the steps for one-point perspective are first draw the horizon line, then locate the vanishing point or put it on, and then draw orthogonal lines. So let's try it. I'm going to show you on the computer first, and then I'm going to show you with my hands. Start with a horizon line, then you add a vanishing point. Then you draw a shape anywhere on your page. It can be a square, it can be a circle, it can be any shape. It's best to do a shape with points. A circle is kind of challenging. It's not impossible, but let's start with squares. Then you draw your orthogonal lines from the corners. If an orthogonal line were to go through the shape, you don't need to draw it. Then you darken those orthogonal lines and you erase anything that doesn't exist. This step, number 5, is a step that doesn't have to be done all the time. Okay? Remember the hints. You need to use a ruler, a pencil, and a good eraser. Draw lightly because if you remember, we have to erase those orthogonal lines. Pay attention. It's a really difficult concept that will take practice and patience. So if you pay attention and you have patience and you practice, then you will succeed. In your sketchbook, you're going to find this worksheet, one-point perspective. This will help us to do one-point perspective and learn about it. The shapes are already set up for you, and they're numbered so that you know where to begin. If you're doing this by yourself, you'll first have to draw a horizon line, the vanishing point, and then some shapes. But it's already set up for you. So it says, using a ruler, line up each corner to the middle dot. Do them in order. So what you're going to need to do is get a ruler. The middle dot is right here, the vanishing point. With your ruler, you're going to put the ruler right next to the 1 point on the number 1 square. Now, I need to make sure that the ruler is also touching my dot. So if I make my ruler touch the dot, we'll notice that all of a sudden it moved away from my corner. So somehow I have to make the ruler and the dot touch. Now, I do not have to use the tip of my ruler to touch there because then I've got so much ruler hanging out this way down here that it's in the way and underneath my arms and uncomfortable. So I'm actually using the middle of my ruler to line them both up. It takes a little bit of back and forth. Now what you need to do is take your hand that you don't write with, my pencil's in this hand, and I'm going to hold my ruler here. Spread my fingers out and press it down using a lot of strength, so much so that my fingers turn a little bit of a different color because I'm holding it down. Then I'm going to take my pencil, push it up against, and draw one line to connect the dot to the point. And move my ruler away. And I'm going to do that for each corner. Dot to point, press my fingers down, and draw. Dot to point, make my ruler match, fingers down, and draw. Now, I have one more point I haven't done, so let's draw that and see what happens. Well, check it out. That line goes through the square. I don't want anything to look through the square because what that means is that this looks like it's a glass box. We're not going to draw glass boxes. That gets really confusing. So anytime that it would be a line that goes through the shape, don't draw it. Or if you do draw it, then go back and erase it. Now that I've done number 1, now I'm ready for number 2. Line my corner up. I'm going to start with this one down here. Line my corner up with the dot. Now notice this edge of the ruler right here goes through my box, which means that if I were to draw a line, it would be inside my box. So because I can see that the ruler is inside the box, I don't need to draw it. Let's see. If I go to this corner, vanishing point to corner, well, the ruler's inside the box, so I'm not going to draw it. Let's try this one. Dot to point. All right, I'm going to draw this one, but what I notice is that a little bit of this ruler is overlapping the number 1 space. So when I'm drawing, I'm going to draw just until I hit the number 1 and then stop. Take this point to the vanishing point and draw it, and I can stop there. Now I can see that I've got lots of different shapes. I've got this triangle up here. I've got the triangle side of the 1 down here, and the top of the number 2 box, which kind of goes up here. Now I'm ready for number 3, and I would do the same thing. Your job is to do this whole worksheet. When you are done, bring it to me, and I will give you a stamp or ask you to try one of the shapes again. Fourth graders, now that you've practiced perspective, now I'm going to challenge you to come up with some way to use perspective. You can use perspective with just shapes. You could turn the shapes into buildings. You can keep the orthogonal lines so that they look like they're in warp speed and vanishing at the vanish point, or you can erase the vanishing points and make it look like just a 3D square, which means you have to add an extra space, and I can help you with that. But your job now is to come up with some idea, some free choice drawing. You will be given a piece of paper, a normal size piece of paper, and you can use any drawing or coloring materials. We're not going to use paint, but you can use chalk, charcoal, pencils, markers, Sharpies, or crayons, or whatever you want. So go ahead, think of your own idea, sketch it in your sketchbook, and then I will give you your paper to begin.